Welcome to the Memories of a Moonbird podcast, exploring life one story at a time. Hello friends, I'm Daniel Scherl. Are you ready to learn some amazing stuff? Well, buckle up, because today on the show, she's a really cool scientist who was born in Russia, speaks 3 languages, and loves good chocolate, ice cream, and tea. She currently works for the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History. There, she studies archaeological samples from the Silk Road that are thousands of years old in the hopes of discovering many long-hidden aspects of ancient humanity. If that's not cool enough, when she got her Ph.D., she made 2 expeditions to the Batagay crater in Siberia, a place that's been nicknamed the doorway to the Underworld. There, she studied something called the permafrost archive to reveal environmental changes that occurred in our world 120,000 years ago. So what's permafrost, and why study these ancient samples? Well, we're going to find out about all of that and a whole lot more as we talk about everything from life, love, and the Russian sense of humor to cultured meat and how the science of ancient humans affects us not just today, but in the future. Please welcome, zooming in all the way from Germany, paleoecologist and paleobotanist, Dr. Kseniia Ashastina. Kseniia, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
So, hey, tell everybody, where in Russia were you born?
I was born in Leningrad, which is now known as St. Petersburg.
And what was life like growing up in Russia?
So I was born in, some years ago. And at that time, back in the USSR. And back then, so perestroika and all of these things happened. So this is the time when a lot of things happened, and a lot of people say it was a time when there was no law. The only rule was there are no rules.
So chaos, basically.
Yeah. Some say it was chaos, and the others say it was time of great opportunities.
What do you think?
Thanks God I don't recall.
Well, I wanted to ask you about Russian stereotypes, because in America, I think there's this long-standing, silly stereotype that, Russians never smile, they all drink vodka, eat borscht, and stand in long lines for toilet paper. So what's it really like to grow up in Russia?
I think everyone had lines for toilet paper quite a couple of months ago everywhere in the world. Thanks God this time is over. The same as it's over in Russia as well. Of course, Russia is a huge country, and every town, every city, every village is different. But I can just talk from my perspective. So I'm coming from big city, so St. Petersburg. I would say it's an European city, so everything is quite good there.
And very modern?
Yeah, it's quite modern. Yeah, it changed a lot during the last 20 years, and you see it. We have a skyscraper now there, and I think it's
Do you have McDonald's?
In Europe. Yeah, we have McDonald's, and this was a huge line. When was that? I think it was in 1991 or 1994.
I remember it made national news here. The first McDonald's in Russia.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't in the line. Cool. I was too small. I wasn't allowed to eat junk food back then.
Do you eat McDonald's now?
Sometimes.
Good.
But
you gotta treat yourself.
Yeah, but they have a lot of junk food things here in Germany, so German junk food things.
What's your favorite German junk food?
Well, I call Bratwurst.
Bratwurst, yeah.
Yeah, like hot dog thing.
Yeah.
A junk food. Many Germans will not approve this. Please don't judge. I think I just tend to call junk food all fast food things.
So if I later on was to ask you, are you a vegetarian? The answer would be no.
I'm from Russia. Sorry, no. I'm from northern Russia. That's not possible there.
That's funny.
It literally is not possible, because during the winter times it's really cold, and you need to have a certain amount of fats and other microelements and whatever in your body to sustain this cold. And historically, we didn't have soya beans or some other things that could...
Tofu?
Yeah, no, these luxury things. Nuh-uh. So it would not compensate. So the nature would not allow us to be vegetarians in the north, at least in the north, and in most of Siberia as well.
Well, speaking of food, does your name, Kseniia, mean something really cool, like lover of chocolate?
Unfortunately not. It comes from Greek language, and It has two meanings. The first one is traveler, and the second one is hospitable person or hospitality.
And how true is that? Are you a hospitable person?
I always have a lot of ice in my freezer and a good variety of teas on the shelf.
So when you were growing up, what was little Kseniia like as a kid?
So I was a really lucky and happy person. Because I had everything I need. I had kasha every day, so that's porridge, Russian porridge. And then I was not seriously abused by pedophiles, which is also very good. And well, I had my Lego. Do you know Lego?
Oh, yeah. Legos were one of my favorite toys growing up. And I actually carried this huge collection of it, like 2 huge boxes of Lego throughout my entire adult life. And just recently, I actually donated the whole thing to a good friend of mine who has young kids so that the Lego can continue to be enjoyed for years to come. So sadly, I have no more Lego. But I really had no idea that Russia actually had Lego. Maybe that's ignorant of me, but that's cool.
Well, I think they started to have it when I was small. So I was in the first wave of Lego things. But we had some Soviet kind of Lego before, I think. But I had this official Lego thing, and I was extremely happy. There were 5 colors.
Did they have like a little Stalin Lego figure?
Yeah. That's so cool.
So what was your favorite thing to build?
Well, I built houses and towers. So I had only bricks and 2 windows, 1 door.
So just like living in Russia.
Exactly. With a roof. That's very good. Yeah, and of course I had a lot of toys. Most of them were from my mom, so they were quite interesting. And a lot of books.
You like to read?
Yeah, I think now we had a TV back then, but there were not that many things for children on air back then.
Well, what was Russian TV actually like then?
My experience is very limited because I got very scared when I turned on TV and there was some probably American movie about some criminals shooting in the streets, and then the policemen were trying to catch them. And I remember I was 4, and it scared me that much because I thought this is exactly what happening right there behind my door. And I have a feeling that was the only thing that was always on TV, some scary criminal things. But when I was in primary school, I started watching TV after school, and there were a lot of different cartoons and the Friends. That was the time of the Friends.
Yes.
So I grew up as a fan, didn't understand a thing, but laughed with them every time.
That's cool. When did you become interested in science?
I cannot say one point of time. I know there were about 3 episodes that subconsciously pushed me in this way. And the first one was the first year of primary school. The teacher, that was maybe the second lesson of primary school, the teacher asked us a question. So there are 2 snowmen standing out in the sun. One is wearing a fur coat, and the second one just standing there as he is. Which one would melt first? And thanks God I didn't say it out loud, but my answer was wrong. So I thought, whoa, Kseniia, you're really stupid. You should stop playing Lego and do some real things. That was
Is the answer the one with the fur coat?
No, that's the right one.
Okay.
No. Wait a second. The fur coat one would stay longer.
Oh, I'm wrong. See? I'm stupid too.
Well, and I didn't got that you said the wrong answer. So who is the stupid one here? Oops.
Maybe I should stop playing with Lego and go do something with my life.
Well, you got rid of your Lego, and I still have mine.
That's true. Do you still actually have yours?
Yes, but not here. It's back in St. Petersburg.
Ah, yeah. That's hilarious. So anyway, so you're at a young age, and the snowmen get you interested in science.
So it was the first episode. The second episode was with my grandpa. I was talking to my grandpa, and he's a really great guy, but that's a whole topic for another podcast. And I was asking him what places has he been to, and he said that he's been to the North Pole on a submarine.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, Grandpa, stop fooling around. the North Pole in a submarine. How's that possible? That's a continent. And then he looked at me and said, well, Kseniia, it's not. And that was the time when I realized, so he told me, explained that there is no continent or island there. So it's basically ocean and ice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 8 years old and thought, well, now it's really the time to pack away my Lego and keep reading. That's not good. Not good.
And what was the third and final episode?
Oh, yeah, the final one, it was already, I think, 2000, early 2000. Or late 1990s, there were more and more news on the TV about the scientific breakthrough discoveries. And most of them were coming from the British scientists. And, well, what do you think about scientists? What do scientists usually do? What topics they research on?
This is not a fair question to ask me because I grew up with a family that was very, very into science, and I grew up watching David Attenborough's Life on Earth and Carl Sagan's Cosmos. So when I think of science, I think of multidisciplinary, geology, astronomy, astrophysics, go down the list, everything from research to from chemistry to geology,
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of think of science as a wide spectrum.
Yeah, but also very serious guys doing some great research.
That's funny. I think of scientists actually as some of the funniest people around because they're usually very intellectual and very well educated, and they have a kind of greater understanding of the world. And I feel like they're usually very, very funny people.
Yeah, that's exactly what I didn't know. So I assume that scientists are very serious guys in glasses.
And stuffy.
Yeah. Nerds, kind of. And then the British scientists reported on such a huge variety on topics. And I thought, whoa, what's that? So one of my favorite, that British scientists discovered that the longer the time cow stays standing, the more likely it is to lay down and have a rest. I thought, what? You can do research on these things? Yeah, so this is actually the time when I realized that, well, you can explore everything. It doesn't need to be a nerdy thing. You can actually go outside and just explore everything what happened to the Earth or probably will happen to this planet and maybe even beyond. And so I thought, well, I want to do this.
And how old were you when you had that thought?
That was 12, I think. But I didn't think of it serious. I thought of it like, whoa, that's such a great thing to be a British scientist. I want to be one of them. It's like a dream work.
Do you still dream of working in England someday?
Visiting England, for sure. Working, well, I don't know how it turns out. If I have a possibility, for sure.
We're going to talk more in detail later about your career specifically and what you do. But I'm just curious, like, where do you see yourself in 20 years? Or where would you like to be, I should say, if you could have a magic wish?
Well, if I have a magic wish, I would like to win a lottery and then establish a research institute that I would not have to work, but I would give money to the people who want to work and discover some great things. I would work as well, but I will not be worried about the money, where to get the grant for one of my research topics and where to go. So I think I would like to settle in one country, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would like to do if I had a lot of money.
Okay.
But that's very unlikely to happen.
Did you travel growing up?
Well, I traveled around St. Petersburg. So we have, St. Petersburg is the city that has been capital of Russia for about 200 years. So Peter the Great started this flash mob, or whatever you can call it. There's been a lot of tsars, queens, and how do you call female tsars?
Tsarina.
Okay, tsars and tsarinas. And of course, each of them wanted to have their own residence, greater than the residence of the other guy. And so there are a lot of palaces and nice parks around St. Petersburg. And every weekend, my mom and we were traveling to one of them and having a nice walk. Then I started really early because of my mom. She was very interested, and she's is still very interested in landscape design.
So as a kid, though, did you guys make trips to Moscow and other cities or no?
Oh, not that far away, but we did a lot of...
Well, how far is Moscow from St. Petersburg?
800 kilometers. Okay, we need to convert it, right?
Kilometers to miles. 434 miles. Okay. Well, looks like it would be a beautiful drive.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but we didn't have a car. And no one in my family has a car.
Still?
Still, yeah.
Do you have a car in Germany?
No. We bike in Germany. We don't need a car in Germany. Germany's small.
Where was the first place outside of Russia that you traveled?
Finland. Yeah, that was Finland.
Mm.
And this is just 3 hours away from St. Petersburg.
Oh, cool.
3 hours car drive. And we have a lot of bus tours going to Finland.
That's cool. Well, let's talk about current events. How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected both your personal life and your career?
Well, my personal life was not that affected. Maybe it was challenged a bit because we, with my boyfriend, were locked up in one flat together for the whole time. But everything went out quite great because we have a lot of board games. We didn't have internet at the beginning of COVID, but thanks God we got it later on. So a lot of board games, a lot of book readings, and that was quite good. And my work was not affected actually that much because as a scientist, you can do a lot online, a lot of researching, writing papers or processing pictures for publications, these things. I also have a microscope at home. So I can work with my samples here as well. So nothing actually happened. Nothing actually changed a lot for me.
So you had to still go to the lab to get your samples and then bring them home, right?
I did it the day before everything was locked down.
Ah, smart.
Yeah, I thought something's going to happen. So I asked my boss and then the manager of the lab, is it okay for them if I take my microscope home? They gave their approval and there was not a problem at all.
How powerful is your microscope?
Well, it's extremely powerful.
Is it monocular or binocular?
Binocular.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
What drew you to physical geography, ecology, and polar and marine research?
My passion for traveling, I would say. When I picked the faculty where I would like to go and what to study, I realized that if you go for physical geography, you have to spend every summer somewhere out in the field. And it would be paid by the university. And well, that sounds like right. That sounds perfect. Every summer, since I was a student, I spent somewhere in different places, mostly in Russia. And that's how I traveled quite a bit of Russia and saw a lot of different places. And I think physical geography is the thing that you should see to understand better. I mean, you can read about these things or even watch a movie, but when you actually stand there on the, volcano and you see it and you think, whoa, that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's life too. Like you can look at 100 different pictures and videos of the Eiffel Tower, but when you stand there and it's right in front of you and this massive thing is going up to the sky and the lights are blinking and the wind is blowing, it's a very different experience to see it firsthand. Yeah. And
then it's always different, right? When there's something on the TV, this is a perspective of one person going there and taking this shot and showing you this movie and telling you these particular things about the place. But when you are there personally, you can experience something totally different, which would be just different. It doesn't mean that it's worse or better. It's different and it's your pure experience, which is really nice, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about permafrost a little bit. So according to the internet, permafrost is ground that is continually frozen for 2 or more years.
Exactly.
What drew you to exploring this and why are scientists so interested in permafrost?
Well, permafrost sounds cool and very far away, but actually it's quite close to us. Maybe not to you, but for a person growing up in St. Petersburg, that's not that far away. About 25% of Northern Hemisphere lays within the permafrost zone, and about 64% of Russia is in the permafrost zone. So it's a huge amount of territory that is somehow affected by this. And if we're talking about the United States, then the Alaska is a permafrost zone area, and also you have permafrost in high mountains, so Rocky Mountains, I suppose, and these things. Actually, so the Great Lakes, you said you're from Ohio, and the Great Lakes are the result of one of the glaciations.
Yeah.
So of the ice sheet retreat. So it's also kind of connected to permafrost. So permafrost was, it developed on the places which were not covered by ice sheets during the glaciations.
Okay.
So this is ice within the soil, within the ground. And yeah, somehow I started to study polar and marine research.
Well, what drew you to want to study it?
Again, there were a lot of expeditions they were offering.
So basically, you just wanted to get out of town and thought, hey, I love science. I'm going to go travel and explore this stuff.
Well, on one hand, yes, I'm from a big city. I didn't like to spend my time in the city. So I would love to use all opportunities to get out. And on the other hand side, this is very interesting questions. And these are fascinating things you can learn about and you can study. And at the end, if everything goes great, then you end up having a paid hobby for the rest of your life. And that was my dream.
Well, let's dig into the science a bit, pun intended, and talk about your expeditions to the Batagay crater when you got your Ph.D. I have a quote from you about that experience. You said, quote, "There are tons of mosquitoes. They're trying to bite you. There's cracking ice and creaking trees. It's dangerous. You'd need to be crazy to enjoy it, but in a good way." Let's talk about this so that the listeners can hear what a scientific expedition can actually be like. So my impression is you leave Germany, and as you told me offline, over the next couple of days, you take several flights, even a propeller plane, until you finally arrive in northern Siberia. And then you drive to some pull-off on the road where you then have to hike almost 2 miles through the taiga forest, all with your gear and all just to get to this crater. So I'm curious, what was the total time that it took to get from Germany to the crater, and what was it like when you got there for the first time?
Well, if we omit the time that we spend overnight at some places and the last minute expedition shopping and getting some agreements and so on, I would say it took me about 16 hours to get from my flat in Germany to the crater itself. It was actually the first permafrost outcrop I have ever seen. And, my first thought when I saw this amazing, almost vertical 70-meter permafrost wall, so my first thought was, wow, it looks like a huge pile of frozen Nutella. Do you know Nutella, this spread?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And so for the listeners, so they know 70 meters in America is about 230 feet.
Oh, yes.
So a 230-foot big blob of Nutella. That's hilarious.
Yeah, but it smelled different, unfortunately.
How did it smell?
Well, it smelled as an old, rotten, huge pile of organics. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Not that nice.
I think people can use their imagination. That's how big is the crater in width? Because I know you said it's about 200 feet deep.
So the data I have, it's about 1 kilometer long and about already also 1 kilometer wide.
Okay, so a little over half a mile.
So
Wow.
it's a nice walk.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is.
That's huge. I mean, that's several city blocks. That's a big crater. So what were the temperatures like that time of year when you were there?
Oh, both times that I visited the outcrop, it was summertime. So the temperature was quite warm and it was sunny. It was almost 86 Fahrenheit.
So it's not typical Siberia that people think of with freezing cold and bitter
Well,
snow.
typical Siberia is really freezing cold, but in wintertime and in summertime, it's quite pleasant there. You can really spend your vacation there if you want.
That's something I think people wouldn't know. I think people would think, I think when we think of Siberia in America, we just always think of, being in the freezing cold weather,
It's probably true from October till May. Maybe.
It's a long winter.
Yeah, it's a long winter. But it's a long winter for Europeans or people who are not, or Americans, people who are not used to this winter, spring, or local spring and autumn. I've been there once in November, which is autumn time for them. And it was I don't know in Fahrenheit, but it was minus 38.
That's about technically it's minus 36.4 Fahrenheit. I'm so good at math. I know these things just off the top of my head. I'm totally not using Google's converter in the background.
Cool.
I am. Shh, secret. Is this big crater a dangerous place?
Well, I wouldn't call it dangerous nowadays. It probably was several thousand years ago. But you're right. One should take precautions when working or even having a date there.
People go on dates there?
Maybe, no, I don't think I would go for a date there, but who knows?
But when you say have a date there, you mean like just going out for a hike and...
No, like man and girl go in for a romantic date there.
So I'm in Siberia and I like this girl and I say, would you like to go sit at the edge of this massive crater and smell something like rotten flesh and shit?
And enjoy the sunset. Yeah. Well, you take what's there.
Our first kiss was over petrified woolly mammoth poop. So you're there at this crater because permafrost is obviously very important to scientists. Can you summarize why it's so important?
Yeah. As we already discussed, permafrost underlays quite an area in Northern Hemisphere and in Russia in particular. And because of its properties, so being below zero temperatures for hundreds of thousands of years, it's a great medium for preserving a huge amount of diverse data on the past. And scientists from a wide range of disciplines can come together to collect parts of this mysterious puzzle and build up an almost complete picture of the past. So past climatic parameters, vegetation, animal world, soil parameters, or and so on, and so many different things. An advantage is that some permafrost is syngenetic. It means that the accumulation of sediments and their freezing took place roughly at the same time. So the material is perfectly preserved in hosting sediments, and it also means that we can identify the succession of layers and their relative chronology. Okay, let's speak about more common things to get an idea what I'm talking about at all.
Okay, so a modern day example.
Modern day example, of course, comes from food, and that would be a cake with a fancy frosting in a super cake shop or whatever you call it.
So multiple layers of cake with multiple layers of frosting and buttercream.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the first layer of cake on the bottom was the first one to come. Then it's overlaid by frosting. Then comes another layer of cake, another frosting. And then on top of this calorie bomb is some maybe whipped cream or even more frosting, something like this. So when you cut this cake, you see its stratigraphy, the succession of layers of cake, and also its relative chronology. So the oldest layer of cake is on the bottom and the youngest is on the top.
Then that's the same with the Earth, right?
Yeah, it's the same with permafrost. Exactly what you see in the permafrost wall after some good training, of course. But I guess it doesn't taste that good. And if we put the cake into the freezer, then it will be conserved there for quite some time. And this is exactly what happened to the material within permafrost.
I understand that about permafrost, but why specifically is the Batagay crater significant?
Yeah, all natural phenomena are special. And it's interesting for scientists because of its location, its age, and the material trapped or caught within. So first of all, the majority of permafrost outcrops are exposed along riverbanks or Arctic Ocean. And due to wave activity, the shores and the banks with permafrost are eroding and exposing permafrost outcrops. The outcrops along the rivers and oceans, they preserve data on environments that prospered under marine climate because they were in the proximity of the ocean.
That's interesting.
And the Batagay is a pure continental climate keet. So the sequence was accumulated under the continental climate conditions.
Assuming the human beings used to live more inland than at riverbeds or ocean fronts, is it then more likely that you're going to have more information about our ancestors at Batagay?
And that's a good question. But if you look in the paleo record, I would say that human beings tend to have settlements near the water bodies. It could be lakes or rivers. And actually, the northernmost archaeological sites are found some 600 kilometers to the north from Batagay.
Interesting.
Or maybe 400 kilometers to the north from Batagay on the riverbank.
Are scientists finding more information from Batagay because it hasn't been eroded away by water over the years and stuff, and it's just been sitting there frozen for a very long time?
Kind of. I wouldn't say that we have more data from the Batagay. I would say we have more curiosity, or at least the research group I'm working in or used to work in. We're particularly interested in Batagay because it's special. It's also the oldest recorded permafrost sequence in Eurasia. So it potentially has a lot of old material. So it contains a huge amount of data that disappears, and we didn't have a chance to explore it yet. That's why it's very, very special for scientists. But not only for scientists, it's also very special for the locals as well.
Why is that?
So there are many shamans that live in the area. And so a lot of landscape features are secret places inhabited by different spirits. And evil spirits live in the underworld. So the land that is thought is taken away by evils. And it's, of course, very frustrating for the locals. And you've heard about the ivory hunters, and this is a big business there. So the men are collecting mammoth tusks and rhinoceros horns to sell them afterwards. And a lot of local people think that collecting bones could bring bad luck for you and your family. And actually, there are some cases that support their fears. But I don't want you and listeners to have an impression that people who live there are barbarians or they're not educated or something like this. No, they respect the place they live and they observe the environment more accurately or more precisely than most of us city kids do.
So you're saying that the locals are more respectful of the environment than people living in cities?
I think people living outside or in the woods or somewhere on the permafrost area, they see the changes and they observe the changes that directly affect their life. That's why I think they're more cautious with what they do.
Is it awareness? Like they're more aware of the changes than people in cities, you think?
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Yes.
Well, time for some fun science trivia. You and I spoke offline about the fact that the area around Batagay is a pole of cold. For the listeners out there, it is a term that refers to a place on the planet with the lowest recorded air temperatures. Antarctica has the coldest pole of cold in the entire world, but the area by Batagay is also a pole of cold, which means it is one of the coldest places on the Earth, correct?
Yeah, true. So you mentioned Antarctica, and there the pole of cold, the southern pole of cold, the recorded temperature was minus 128.6 Fahrenheit.
That's cold.
Quite chilly, right?
Yes, very chilly.
But there are no people living there. Or, I mean, there are some research stations, but they're not living there permanently.
I mean, I like the cold, but that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's too much. I also think it's too much. And the pole of cold of the northern hemisphere is located about 60 kilometers away from the Batagay crater in Verkhoyansk town, which is a populated area where the air temperature goes down to minus 90 Fahrenheit.
That's still cold.
Yeah, to be fair, there is another settlement, Oymyakon, also not that far away from there, where people enjoy winter air temperatures of minus 89.9 Fahrenheit.
No, thanks. Well, in some of your videos, Kseniia sent me some videos from her expedition, and I'm going to put some of these on my website. So listeners, you can go to memoriesofamoonbird.com right now and click on my podcasts, then episodes, and choose Kseniia's episode. And there you're going to see some of these insane videos for yourself. You'll see videos of the crater, and you're also going to see videos about these insane mosquitoes, which I want to talk about. So tell the listeners about these crazy mosquitoes, because I saw the video and I was just like, no thanks.
Well, this particular video is taken in another place in Siberia, but still it's kind of always the same. Actually, I can withstand mosquitoes quite well. after 3 minutes of a cloud of mosquitoes chasing me, I accept them as a white noise. So they're always there, 30 days long. And at some point, I started to think that they're my personal...
Wait, when you say they're always there 30 days long, what do you mean? Like they're there all year round, or they only last for 30 days?
They're there all the time that I'm staying. So when I'm out in the expedition.
Oh, so you were there for 30 days. They were there the whole time?
Yeah, well, my longest expedition was about 60 days in a row, but 30 days that was in northern Siberia where there were a lot of mosquitoes. And unfortunately, 30 days, there were no mosquitoes, but other beasts.
Well, like what other beasts?
Now, wait a second. I want to talk about mosquitoes a bit more.
Oh, okay. Please, go ahead.
So at some point, I started to think that they are my personal orchestra.
Okay.
And sometimes it's not that well tuned. And black flies, they're awful.
They are. They get in your eyes and your ears. And
yeah. And this silent beast eat your skin, actually. So they're so tiny, yeah, they can get through the net and they feast all and day long on you. So imagine you're in a tent, some meters away, permafrost cracks, trees creak, chunks of ice smashing on the bottom of the crater as if you're at a huge parking slot, where some crazy people shut doors of their cars all the time, and you're bitten by silent black flies.
So you're telling me that you're sitting in a tent, or you're trying to sleep in a tent, and there's this noise of the Batagay crater melting and these chunks of earth falling 200 feet to the ground, right? There's mosquitoes buzzing outside, and you're being bitten by black flies inside the tent.
When there are black flies, there are no mosquitoes. So I prefer mosquitoes over black flies. At least I can hear them.
Okay, but then you're sitting inside this tent with all this noise, and you're being eaten by black flies. How do you sleep?
Tight as a rock, because you worked the whole day before that. Well, actually, during the summertime, you have a polar day there. So it's sunny all the time.
Oh, really? It's not dark at night?
No, it's not dark at night. It's the light is a bit dimmed. Is it the right word to use?
Dimmed, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But still, it's always sunny. So the sun is always over the horizon. And that's why you work a lot of time, I would say. Maybe 16 hours a day or something. Because, I mean, you have light.
And you just pass out because you're so tired?
Yeah, and then you're just knocked out.
And you wake up missing some of your flesh.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes, yes.
Well, now that sounds like fun. And by fun, I mean horrible. So there you go, listeners. If you want to be a scientist and go out into the field, you can look forward to things like being eaten alive by black flies and not getting any sleep in a tent. And I'm sure a million other fun things, or as we call them, character building experiences.
Well, if it's a problem, it's not a problem for me to sleep when there is sun.
But do you wake up seriously, like all bitten up and having little flea bites all over you?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes you don't sleep at all. I would say there were 2 nights when we couldn't sleep at all. But usually you're in the tent with someone else. So it's a good thing to choose a sweet person to be in a tent with. So they get all the vibe. Don't tell my colleagues.
Yeah, or just rub them down secretly, spray them with some sweet spray or some jam.
No, actually, we try to get rid of all the insects in the tent. First of all, we try not to let them in. Mm-hmm. And then before falling asleep, we try to get rid of them.
Can't you use some bug spray, inside the tent so they don't, or outside on the flaps or whatever, so they don't come in?
Well, if you're not allergic to the spray, yes, you can. Okay. And actually, that's what we kind of do.
Well, all kidding and sarcasm aside, I am beyond impressed and completely respect scientists and anyone else who goes out and does this kind of work. I'm curious, especially in the name of trying to improve humanity, do most scientific expeditions have some level of discomfort or things you have to deal with alongside them?
I think so. It depends what you call discomfort. For some people, staying in a tent for more than 2 days is already discomfort. For others, drinking river water is a bit uncomfortable. For example, we ate nearly 2 weeks just fish for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. because we were fishing there. It's so delicious. I mean, you should be prepared for these things. Yeah, we didn't have fresh coffee. We didn't have fresh bread every morning or croissants or something fancy. But
do you take food with you? Like, do you take canned goods and things like that as part of the expedition, or are you just all local?
We buy local things, but usually they're pasta or usually rice and some canned vegetables, canned meat. I mean, it depends where you are. In our Siberian expeditions, we always did some fishing because it's actually the best thing you can do. You always camp near the river or lake, and then you go fishing there. And it's always fresh. It's extremely delicious. And it's very healthy. But actually, Siberian fishing is so boring. You just put your fishing rod in, and within 5 seconds, you get a fish.
I don't know if I'd call that boring. That's very efficient. I like it.
Efficient, yeah. Another word for this.
So how did Batagay actually become a crater? Is it true that we think it was because of deforestation in the region?
Well, you know everything. You can tell people.
I do my research.
Yeah, you're great. So yeah, this is a very likely scenario that the area was deforested and therefore a crucial vegetation cover with a thick layer of moss was damaged. So vegetation is a sort of protective cover for permafrost. If you remember, our two snowmen, one standing in the fur coat, another is without fur coat in the sun. So this is the same story here, actually. Permafrost without vegetation cover is like a snowman without a fur coat. It will thaw faster. So back in the 50s or 60s, the vegetation integrity was damaged and an ice-rich permafrost was exposed to the sunlight. So it formed a gully directed from northeast to southwest, and that grew in depth and length till the 90s. And then a rapid thawing transformed the gully into the ray-shaped giant that keeps on expanding even today.
And how fast is it expanding, and do you think it will stop at some point?
Oh, I wish we could have solid answers to these questions. The content of ice within permafrost is not homogeneous. That's why the thawing or expanding rate can vary from one side of the outcrop to another. But according to rough estimations made by my colleagues from Alfred Wegener Institute in Germany and Institute of Cryolithozona in Russia, the erosional rate is from 12 to 30 meter per year, which is 40 to 97 feet per year, with an average of 15 meters, so 59 feet per year.
Wow.
But we should take into account that thawing is taking place only during summer months, so when it's warm, above zero temperatures established. So it's roughly 4.5 months per year.
Wow. So it's roughly 15 feet a month.
Yeah. It's huge, right?
That is huge.
It's impressive.
And if you were to divide 30 days by 15, you're talking about 2 feet every day.
So you actually can see.
Yeah, you can see it every day.
Expanding.
So then this brings into the question, of course, of global warming. If the Earth continues to warm and this thing starts thawing longer and longer, if it's not just 4 months, let's say it's now starts thawing 6 months or 8 months out of the year, it's going to expand even further and deeper and faster because of longer thaw times.
Yeah.
So it's another reason that global warming could be a concern. Well, one of my questions is, as this thing defrosts and the permafrost melts, are scientists at all concerned that we could be exposing ourselves to like 100,000-year-old bacteria or in some cases viruses that we're not prepared to handle?
Can I be a bit nerdy now?
Of course, please.
And say that permafrost doesn't melt, it thaws. So ice within permafrost, it melts, and permafrost itself, it thaws because it's sediment and ice, it's a mixture.
Oh.
So it's, for example, your snowball. If you have a snowball, if you're a lucky one to have snow in winter and you have a snowball in your hand,
it melts.
It melts. But if you have a chicken from the freezer,
it thaws.
Exactly. And this is the thing with permafrost.
Okay. I appreciate the distinction, and I shall take that with me the rest of my life. So are scientists concerned? No, that's actually really good to know. That's really good distinction.
Exactly.
To know.
It's very important. It's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting back, though, are scientists concerned that if too much permafrost thaws, that we could expose ourselves to 100,000-year-old bacteria or viruses that we're not prepared to handle?
Well, scientists that I work with are not greatly concerned about it. But it's just because we do not investigate this matter, these questions. But indeed, you're right. There are some outbreaks of diseases in Siberia, for example, smallpox or anthrax.
Anthrax?
Yeah, anthrax. And usually reindeers are infected and sometimes also humans. But the population density is so low that the outbreaks remain local. So yes, it could be dangerous, but I wasn't concerned about it when I was working there.
Of course, a really great movie for Hollywood would be that a scientist goes to the Batagay crater, gets exposed to some ancient form of smallpox, comes back to Germany, and then infects the entire planet with a pandemic. Oh, wait, sorry. That's not a movie. That's COVID.
That's reality. Whoa. But it didn't start in Russia.
That's true.
That's a really good point that we should have infectionists and people working with all these diseases, even if we think they're already gone, they're in the past. Whoa, please, we need these people. Pay them.
Yeah, I agree.
Give them a job.
Overall, if you had to choose one thing, what is the most important thing for you about permafrost?
It's very hard to name one thing. I would say permafrost itself is a unique medium that conserves so many answers to the questions that probably were not yet asked.
Could I summarize that and say that for you, the most important thing is that permafrost is an archive of the past?
Yeah, I would say you're super right, but it's important not just for me, but for the whole humankind.
Ooh, yeah, I love it. That's great.
It is. It really is.
So after all the expeditions, including the ones that you've done and any research that still continues to this day, what have scientists discovered about Batagay so far? Anything significant?
A lot of significant things. So scientific groups already established a preliminary stratigraphy of the outcrop. They reconstructed vegetation that covered the area during the Amiens interglacial. It's about 120,000 years ago. And vegetation during the onset of the last glacial maximum, about 28,000 years ago. They also found and explored the carcasses of Pleistocene animals, so bisons, horses, and so on. They also worked with paleosoil properties, and even ancient DNA analysis was run on some of these sediments.
Wow.
And they also identified winter temperatures on the basis of ice wedge isotopes and dated some of the layers, and it appears to be the second oldest permafrost sequence in the world reported so far. So I would say we just made the first scratch. There's still a lot to do.
And I assume scientists are continuing to go there to this day.
Yeah. Yes.
So I know we covered how fast the crater is expanding. Do you think it's going to stop at some point?
Well, local geologists said that at some point the bedrock will be reached, so the rock will be reached, and so the thawing will stop. But of course, everything will eventually end. But before that, a lot of damage will be done. Damage to local infrastructure, damage to the environment, damage to the local river ecosystem, and damage to local sacred places.
Is there any way to actually stop this thing from expanding and thawing?
I'm not sure. There are some scientists who work on the infrastructure that blocks the erosion rates, for example, in temperate climate zones. But as far as I know, there were no projects, or there were no big projects in permafrost zone.
How long do you think it'll be until it reaches the bedrock?
Oh, it's very hard for me to estimate the time. I wouldn't even try to estimate.
Okay.
But I think we still have some time in getting the data that thaws out.
There's a part of me that wants a big chunk of this crater to break off, and then suddenly there's an entire skeleton of a woolly mammoth just sitting there, and scientists are like, "Oh my God!"
Finally.
So all that science was fascinating to learn about, and thank you for sharing it. But that was all your Ph.D. What are you doing today at the Max Planck Institute?
Aha.
Aha.
So I actually keep on doing what I did for my PhD. I apply plant macrofossil method to analyze contents of different kinds of samples.
Now say that in plain English so listeners can understand what that means.
Yeah. So fossils are any preserved impressions or traces of once living organisms.
Mm-hmm.
So there are macro and micro remains. And macro refers to big things, the things that are visible with naked eye. And micro refers to small things, and we need a microscope to see them. So plant macrofossils or macro remains are, for example, seeds, fruits, leaves, twigs, and so on. And although they are called macrofossils, I use microscope to see the surface structure of them and identify the things. And after identifying all plants from the sample, I can say what vegetation it used to be, or if we're talking about archaeological samples, what plant species are found there. So generally, I work in the field of fundamental science, so trying to answer the questions like, where does this plant come from? Where did it originate? When was it cultivated? What woolly mammoths were feeding on? How did vegetation look like 100,000 years ago? But some of the answers might be applied to the up-to-date issues. For example, how will the vegetation respond to the changing climate? Or who can take over seed dispersal of fruit trees after humans destroy habitat of all rare and endangered frugivores? So the animals that feed on fruits.
Is your job exciting to you?
Yeah, I find it very fascinating. I think it's also, as we talked about, it's a paid hobby.
What's the goal of your studies? What are you hoping to find?
It depends on the research questions, and it also depends on the samples with which I work. If I work with archaeological samples, then our interest would be to find out what people were eating, which kind of plants they were eating, and at what period of time they added new plants to their diet. And now I'm working in Max Planck Institute with the samples from the Silk Road. So this famous trading route from China to Europe, actually. And we can trace how the plants were traded.
But let's say you get that information and you discover these things. What does that do for science?
We don't know these things yet. We don't know all of the things yet. We don't know where the origin of, for example, fruit trees are. We cannot pinpoint these areas yet.
Well, no, what I'm asking in a global perspective is, why is this important? Why do we need to find this out? What's the point of you?
What's the point of me? I can't. If I'm talking about me working with permafrost, what I did for my PhD, the point of that, if once you can recreate a mammoth, a woolly mammoth, and there are studies and there are research groups working on it, I'm going to be the one who tell what are the right plants to feed him.
Do you think they're actually going to recreate a woolly mammoth from DNA?
I hope they will not, but it's quite possible, yeah.
Why do you hope not?
Yeah, it's a tricky ethical question, isn't it?
It is. I'd love to hear your answer.
He'll be the only one here, very lonely. Then the climate is not really appropriate for it. And who will be the owner of him? Which country?
And can they create several of them so they're not lonely?
Probably, yes.
I would think they belong in Siberia because it's fucking cold there.
Yeah, but it's also a bit different now from what it used to be 11,000 years ago.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
And then there would be crazy hunters who would eventually kill it. So,
well, do you believe we should be working on human cloning and the ability to clone organs for transplants and things like that?
Cloning, probably, yes. I think it's very innovative right now. For personally, for me, I know there have been studies for decades already in cloning, but I don't think it's something bad if you can save more lives with this technology without harming actual other living being.
Well, I think that some of the concerns are going to be that evil cabals or governments are going to make super soldiers. And, Hitler's dream of the perfect Aryan race could be achieved with genetic cloning. So it's kind of scary.
Yes, but I mean, there are so many ways that we can screw up our life. Genetic cloning is not the only one.
Yes.
I mean, I think there are very horrible things that are going on now in the military. Drones and the things they can do, actually, the things they can achieve right now, I think they're a bit more scary than cloning.
Than growing a heart in a lab?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that they're working on right now is called cultured meat, also known as vat meat, where they take cells from an animal and then they actually grow the meat in a lab. They grow the portion that we just want to eat without all the other stuff, and we don't have to slaughter animals. And I'm just curious, how do you feel about that as a scientist?
When I hear it, I'm scared.
Why is that?
Because I think it's unnatural on one hand. On the other hand, I think it might be a solution for the food security and for the other ongoing global issues that we have.
Factory farming and all those things.
Yeah, these are awful. I mean, yeah. But I think that's my first opinion on everything new. I'm kind of, first of all, cautious and think, whoa, wait a second. Let me think about this. I'm not sure it's going to work. And then if I take time, I think about it and now, yeah, maybe, why not?
So is your first response a bit of skepticism?
Yes, always.
Do you think that's a trait of you personally, or is that a cultural Russian thing?
I think it might be my personal trait.
Okay.
But taking everything with humor, like making jokes about all the shits going on, it's totally a Russian thing.
All the shits. I love it.
Well, there's no other way you can survive in that country.
There's no other way to survive a human life without humor, I don't think. All right, so big question. Do you believe in love?
Oh, what does that mean?
Do you ever want to get married and have kids, or are you just happy to be girlfriend, boyfriend forever?
Oh, I think that believe in love and have family, they're not the same things. I mean, you can be in love without having a wife and kids.
I agree.
I mean, if you have a partner, you're in love, that's totally okay.
What do you say to people who think that climate change isn't real?
Well, I think they should read more.
That's a great answer.
They should go out and see themselves what's going on.
How do you think we can create a more positive change in the world going forward?
We should be more concerned about what's going on, and not only what's going on between that kissing couple across the street, but actually what's going on everywhere, including our own head. And we should be more responsible for our actions.
I agree.
It's starting from the food waste, the type of car you drive, the way you're traveling, until the political decisions you make. We should be really aware of what we're doing and active in this.
Are you optimistic about the future overall? Like, do you think the human race is going to survive and have a bright future?
I would say it might be pretty bright after the nuclear winter. We will not find out. I don't know. The people I see, some of the people I see outside and inside and everywhere, I'm really scared about the future.
If you're that scared about the future, why do you want to have kids and risk bringing them into a world that could end?
First of all, maybe that's in my nature. I maybe should have kids.
Shouldn't hospitality be in your nature?
Yeah, so I'm very hospitable to my kids. They should be there. I should welcome them. I mean, I have eyes in my freezer. I should feed them somehow. Why to have kids? There's one friend of mine who decided not to have kids because of the awful situation in the world. I highly respect this. I think that's an amazing point. But somehow I think we should always have hope. And that's not because I'm thinking I'm very special, but maybe the kids who will be born, they will change this attitude.
I agree.
I think there should be some kind of critical mass. So there should be more and more of people thinking differently and growing in different times. For example, I think people born in 2000, 2010, they're totally different from you and me.
Yeah.
So they have different perspectives. They value their time and their knowledge differently.
Mm-hmm.
I hope so. And so I really like what Greta Thunberg did,
Mm-hmm.
and all the kids, this Fridays for Future things. I think this is extremely important that children or underaged, who some adults think are not smart enough, or they should sit, drink Coke and watch, I don't know, Simpsons or whatever, don't not offending Simpsons, but just watching television.
But they actually are right. That's the point. I agree with you.
They will live in this world. I mean, we're all this. We'll go extinct soon. And they are exactly the people who will live there.
Yeah.
We should make decisions for them, or at least listen what they want.
So if you had your kind of dream life as a scientist, would you be in a lab 9 months out of the year and then 3 months out of the year, every year take a trip somewhere to do field research?
Well, I would prefer to be 9 months in the field and 3 months in the lab. No, I really enjoy being outside. I really love expeditions. So 2.5 months, 3 months, no problem. I'm in. Whatever you say, I will just go there and do this. I really like being outside. I really like communicating with the locals because they're so amazing people. Well, living there in the pole of cold, this is insane. And they're so happy. And I ask, what? But this is so hard. And they say, well, no. We have our WhatsApp accounts. We can communicate with each other. That's okay.
Wow.
You're just going faster in the streets. You just run. It's also kind of physical activity. That's also good. They're really amazing people. And when you look in their eyes, you're like drowning there. They're so deep.
Yeah.
And they know so many things. And this is what I would like more and more scientists to appreciate, to talk to the locals, to ask them questions, because they're actually people living out there. So they know all the natural phenomena. Maybe they cannot address them the way the Western, let's call them this way, Western scientists. So they cannot use the same terminology maybe, but they observed the permafrost thawing for generations already. They know these things, they have the names, and this is what I like in permafrost science. Some terms are called after the local indigenous people's terms.
Oh, cool.
And this is so great because it's gratitude and respect to the locals. Mm-hmm. And there are more and more projects where people actually work with the locals.
Do you feel it's safe as a woman to go traveling and doing these things? Do you ever feel in danger or no?
Yes, definitely I felt in danger. That's why I think a self-defense course is very important to take before you go in on the field.
Now, do you feel more in danger from bears and animals and nature or people?
I think that's the reason why I enjoy being in the nature, is that I feel maybe more secure there, because I have no idea what I can expect from the human beings around me. Even in a big town, I don't feel really comfortable because they were... Well, since childhood, there were a lot of different cases and not nice cases. But luckily for me, everything ended up quite good. But still, I don't know. I feel very comfortable out there. And I know it's all on you if you survive or not.
Yeah.
And this kind of challenge I like to take.
Well, I'm curious, what do you like to do with your spare time when you're not off, scientifically figuring out the world?
That's a good question. Well, I like Lego, as we already know, and I still like reading, and I like being outside. So, and also I have a fear of height. How do you call it?
Height. A fear of heights?
Yeah, fear of heights. That's why I decided to do the climbing thing.
Cool.
And bouldering. So this is what I used to do regularly. Now with the Corona time, not that regular. So I'm not.
So wait, you actually rock climb?
Boulder indoors, and I've been in the Alps, so outdoors climbing just once so far.
Okay, so reading, nature, hiking and climbing.
Reading, eating, nature, hiking, climbing.
Eating, yeah.
Important.
What's your favorite childhood book?
It's from a Russian author.
Okay.
That would be Sutyev. He made a lot of nice books and drawings about animals and their funny stories. But if we're talking about the international one, then it would be Astrid Lindgren. Do you know, she's the Swedish author. Karlsson on the Roof. I'm sure it's translated into English.
Okay.
She's an amazing person. She was an amazing woman, and she has great, great stories for children.
That's cool.
Maybe sometimes naughty. I think even as adult, you would enjoy reading her books.
Okay. What's the first book that you read or movie that you saw that made you cry?
About the movie, that would be Free Willy. I really loved it. Actually, I was obsessed by killer whales since then. And I am still obsessed with them. It's my dream to see an orca whale, a real orca whale in the wild.
Are you religious?
No, I'm not.
Do you believe in God?
Certainly, I believe there is something out there. I'm not sure what's that. Is it a guy or a girl? Is there just one or many? I think that Greek mythology is quite cool. Because they had several gods and they were as real people with their, strange features and character. Some were jealous, some were stupid. That's great.
So if you had to choose dogs or cats?
Dogs, definitely dogs.
Oh, God, yes.
You're too?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yes, very much. Yeah, huge dog lover. Yeah. What's one of your all-time favorite movies now today?
Oh, I think I don't have any yet. But the movie that I gladly watch over and over again would be Up.
Oh, yeah.
I really liked it.
What's one of your favorite foods?
Oh, I think anyone who would ever try the mushroom soup that my grandfather did would be a fan of it. And that it's literally the best thing you can eat. He used to go into the forest and pick up the mushrooms himself. Then we would peel them together, cut them together, put them on a thread and let them air dry outside our house. So it's amazing smell and it's so, so delicious. And the other thing you can get nearly everywhere would be pilmeni, I think. These are Russian pilmeni. These are Russian dumplings.
What's inside them?
Meat. They're Russian.
Now, do you know how to make them?
Yes, we did it with my grandma.
Oh.
Always when we were children, with my cousin, sister, and my granny, and I still do them alone.
What about favorite ice cream flavor?
I really like chocolate with crisps. But I must admit, we have way less ice cream flavors here or in Russia, back in Russia. The one I really liked, and I made it myself as well later on, was raspberry basil. That's so delicious.
If you could continue to live a healthy life, how long do you think you'd like to live?
I already failed. I don't live healthy life. I mean, chocolate, the amount of chocolate I consume, no way. That's not healthy. I don't know. I think I would love to see my great grandchildren. That's pretty much the time.
Are you afraid of dying?
Right now, not. I'm more afraid of my family members dying. I don't think it would be. I have no idea how it would be, but it's usually that I'm more worried about people around me than about myself. And dying is also the point.
What are you most passionate about in life today?
Oh, would it be awful to say ice cream?
No.
Well, I'm really passionate about the nature, and I'm really keen on growing people's awareness on the environmental issues that are taking place right now. We should really take care of what we're doing, how we're consuming, how much we're consuming, and be responsible, starting from right yesterday.
If you could travel back in time right now and see your 10 or 12-year-old self, what would you tell your younger version of you?
I would say, go girl! Future Kseniia will take care of this.
Awesome. What do you think is the purpose of art?
Oh, the purpose of art would be moving people's emotions, I think, to unravel what's inside and make them think about the things they maybe would never think of in their daily life. What do you think?
No one's ever actually put that question back on me. Honestly, my answer is very similar to what you said. I think it's to create something that allows a human being. I think art is something that allows people to touch what it actually means to be human in many different forms.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows us to understand the expression of what it is to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What does success in life look like to you?
Success would be a freedom of doing what you want to do without harming anyone else around. So without harming or without damaging the people around you, without harassing their freedom, people around you and any other living beings. So it's really happiness to be yourself, to know what you want and to be able to do it somehow.
What's your spirit animal?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind would be Gula Gula. Do you know this one?
No.
That's the Latin name for Wolverine.
Wolverine.
Yeah, it's not because I'm that badass, but because Gula Gula, the Latin name, the scientific name for Wolverine, literally translates as glutton, so hungry. And that perfectly fits.
All right. Well, it's time for one of my all-time favorite questions on the show. If you could sit with anybody from all of human history, alive or dead, except for your own family or Jesus, Mohammed, Moses, any kind of prophet, and you can sit with them in a really cool old-timey pub for 4 hours, who would you talk to? What would you drink? And what would you ask them about?
That's a really hard one. I have no clue, actually. Okay, it would be either Papanin. This was one of the Russian explorers of the Arctic. He had a cool expedition back in 30s. He with 3 other guys, so they were just 4 guys, out on the ice floe, and they were drifting around the Arctic Ocean for several months and collecting all the data about the climatic parameters there, about the ocean parameters, and about everything. And they were the first ones who did it for several months. And I think this is amazing what people used to do in the Arctic and Antarctic 100 years ago or 300 years ago. This is something we still think it's really harsh region to go there, to work, to have expedition there. It's really hard to organize logistics and everything, clothes. And I think, whoa, guys back there just took their dog sledge and went there.
Yeah.
And I would definitely ask him about his experience there.
What are you going to drink?
Well, I think he would really appreciate a really good cup of hot tea.
Of course, after being in all the cold. What's the first question you're going to ask him?
How many dogs did he eat?
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing we do on the show, it's a little game I have called 299 Philosophical and Life Questions with Moonbird. You get to pick 2 numbers from 1 to 299, and I'm going to ask you those 2 questions. What are your 2 random numbers?
I have no idea if they've been on the show already. So 222 and 13.
222 and 13. Okay, this one has not been on the show before. Fantastic. 222. What's the most useful thing you own?
Useful thing? I think it's duct tape. You can do everything with this thing, and you should have it on expedition.
Number 13, we actually already answered during the podcast, so you have to pick a different number.
Okay, cool. Then let's go for 173.
173.
It was on the show?
This is going to be great. No.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
How would you rate your looks on a scale of 1 to 10?
My looks?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the outfits or
no, how pretty do you think you are?
Well, no, I'm not that ugly. I would be 4.5.
You said 4.5?
Yes, it's not that bad.
I appreciate you trying to be humble, but I think that the fans of the show would probably give you a much higher number than that. So we'll just leave it up to them.
Thank you.
Kseniia, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. It has been fascinating talking with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to zoom in from Germany. I wish you the best of luck with your career, and I hope we get to bring you back on the show again down the road and hear some updates about what you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Daniel. That was great pleasure talking to you. That was extremely easy to talk to you.
Oh, thank you.
thank you, all the listeners, and subscribe.
Yes, subscribe. What she said. Talk to you soon. Take care and have a great day.
Thanks a lot.
Friends and listeners, as you can hear, science is cool. So if you're interested in learning more about the sciences, there are a cajillion resources out there, from online training to local schools to your library to friends to professors. There's just an innumerable amount of places you can go to learn. I encourage you to do so and help make the world a better place. You can also make the world a better place by supporting this show. We are on Patreon at patreon.com/Moonbird. That's patreon.com/Moonbird. Hey, and a plane just went by. They also want you to support the show. And if you'd like more Moonbird in your life, and hey, who wouldn't? Head on over to memoriesofamoonbird.com or visit me on social media at Memories of a Moonbird. And remember, that plane just went by because of science. Stay safe.